conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
WESN.
Good morning. I find myself, besides myself, wondering, questioning myself, questioning how I feel about certain situations, what I think about those situations, which is not always the same thing. You know, sometimes you have an emotional response to something, and then if you think it through, you might be able to come to a different conclusion. You might be able to use reason, though one's reason to some extent is tied to one's emotional thought process. At the end of the day, very few people can be strictly objective about any situation, unless they are dispassionate about it. And that's a catch-22 scenario. If you care about the country, how are you going to be dispassionate and apathetic and aloof to the country, right? If you don't care about the country, you could be those things, but then are you going to have the motivation to put in the work? How do you balance that? So, since if you're passionate about the country, it's difficult to fully remove emotions out of it, you still have to try to go through the exercise, but I find myself this morning having difficulty going through that exercise. And I'm wondering, do I have a bias? Not necessarily what people accuse me of, because usually the circumstances, the arguments, the reasoning, and half the time there is no reasoning, that commenters or callers put forward to me of me being biased is far too weak and mostly frustrating with regards to how weak the arguments are. Especially when usually the timings would suggest otherwise. Because we are equal opportunity critics. However, and this happened under the PNM administration. Under the previous administration, they reached a point where I consciously had to stop complaining about the opposition UNC's inability, because it was being a recurring decimal, and I didn't want to come across as someone just harping on the same thing over and over as a hater. And I didn't necessarily want to be someone coming across as an outright hater of the government either. It's just that the government makes decisions, sets policy, has new things come up, so there's always something new to potentially complain about. Key word there is, it's supposed to be potentially. In reality, it became an actuality. There was always something new to complain about. And I understand at the end of one's term, things will get shaky. That's a pattern we see throughout the world in politics. I just didn't expect to reach this point so soon. Now, before I get into why I'm besides myself this morning, and a lot of you might not see it the way how I see it, I might think I'm getting worked up for nothing. But before I get into that, I just want to mention a few things, because I was more than happy to start off this wonderful Friday morning in an upbeat manner. One of the things that I wanted to say, mention, I had a minor fender bender last night. Somebody hit me. They didn't see me as they were trying to exit a parking lot. It is what it is. The inconvenience of the whole situation was greater than the actual harm. But the main thing that the main reason why I want to mention it is, when we, of course, now pulled off into another parking lot to trade information and all of that, and then we have to make a police report. So that was the big thing, where to go. Because despite the fact that police leadership will say things like, you could report anything, anywhere, anytime, somehow directives from the executive can at times be ignored by their own subordinates. And it's not just limited to the police. We've seen this with the Registrar's General Office in Tobago, one of the most blatant examples. And dare I ask how many other examples we have throughout the length and breadth of the public service. Not the public servants who actually work hard and try to do their best to save the people, but the ones who are lazy and are just there to collect a check. Like those at the time in the Registrar General's Office in Tobago who basically lied to people. Dare I ask, did they face any consequences for that? Anyway, so we were concerned that we might get the runaround and end up having to go to some faraway station that technically by the name, because we were at the edge of Maraval, and the St. Clair police station was right there. And we were, you know, you hear the stories, so next thing you know, they sent us, no, you had to go to Maraval, which would have been way further away. But we went to St. Clair, and no muss, no fuss. To be fair to the officers there, they did their job. They did not put up any, I did not feel any sort of way. I did not, and I have seen this before when people who I was with had to report incidents that their vehicles were a part of. I've seen this before. One would think it's such a simple thing. Luckily, somehow it's not my direct experience. I haven't been in that many accidents. So I was, you know, for something so simple, it seems so simple, but I was reminded once again, yes, this is a significant inconvenience of time, but you have to go through the process. And the police officer spent essentially an hour, or close to an hour, writing up all the paperwork. No complaints, he didn't fuss, he didn't look at us on stoops. I've seen that before elsewhere. Totally professional. So I wanted to say that in the show to remind people not all police officers are bad. Also, I'll say this, and this is no fault to the officers of the station, I just felt, and maybe, I don't know if it was because of the location, I'm like, there's not a lot of officers here, boy. Hopefully they're all out on patrol. I think we underestimate, as citizens, the manpower and how it is utilized in an institution that technically has to be open 24/7 a day. Because we probably compare it to our day jobs where you might have one shift, maybe two shifts. 24/7 means 3 shifts. That third shift makes a big difference on your manpower, because you essentially, if you want to just be oversimplified in your calculations, you divide your manpower by 3. Of course, not all of them are for patrol and to man the station. Some of them are admin and so forth. So technically, you have to take all of that out, then divide it by 3. And that's what's available to police the nation. I do wonder if we're not necessarily managing things properly from the top. Now, a couple other things. WASA has announced there's going to be a shortage of water in the soil cut because of the quality of the raw seawater. There's biological material more than usual in the water, so they've had to be more careful or have a more stringent process to purify that water. It is what it is. Please be advised. They say from February 22nd, so I'm not entirely sure how long this will take. They say that they are monitoring the situation. Like, at the end of the day, you can't control the availability of seawater, what's in it, right? They didn't necessarily say, I don't think, exactly what the biological material was. And like I said, I don't think it's reasonable to ask them how long they think this is going to happen, right? But the adjustments started on March the 2nd because they, one, have to guarantee the safety of the drinking water. 2, they have to, I guess, monitor the equipment and not cause any undue strain on the equipment that could damage it. There was also a situation where apparently a young man was impersonating a police officer. And this is where I depart. During a state of emergency, fake TTPS identification card, police kit were some of the items confiscated. He was also armed. Not entirely sure what his purpose was. It seems as though he was out and about, armed with the ID card, with the equipment, with etc. And it didn't say if he was interfering with the public or just trying to have, I don't know, stolen valor. Or maybe it was a setup for something greater. But the police, they got the report, so they received coordinated intelligence. I guess not necessarily everybody in the public might have known that he was a fake police officer, and they arrested him. During a state of emergency, yeah, the criminals are shaking in their boots. Now, the SOE, and we'll speak about that a bit more, the Tobago Hoteliers Association is concerned about the timing of the SOE, claiming that there are cancellations in their winter reservations. Now, my personal experience is, as we're in March, I don't recall foreign sales when I was in Tobago being significant in March. But of course, the ebbs and flows, it's been a long time. So my information, my experience is probably outdated, right? However, if he says that they have had cancellations, which he claims, we do have to ask. It's not necessarily, I don't know if they have all used the SOE as the reasons for the cancellations, but it's not necessarily a causation. It could be a correlation. That said, you can't not consider the possibility, right? Also consider the fact that when you have a state of emergency, to what degree the population, so there's the international tourists who might be canceling. And note, when you have cancellations, it's not like Great Fete weekend. If you have cancellations, you might get someone desperate who lucked out and called, hey, you have any room? Some last minute person who's bold enough to still call around, and you had a last minute cancellation, and they somehow have plane tickets or board tickets, and you get lucky. For international travel, that's not how it works. They book months in advance. If they cancel for the next upcoming holiday period, good luck trying to replace that international traveler. And the reason why international travelers are important, it's not because international travelers are magically better people or superior people. It's because they just tend to stay longer. That's it. They tend to stay longer, so they tend to provide more income and revenue for various businesses on the island of Tobago. And even if it's a cheaper rate, which in some cases it's not, and in some cases they pay a more expensive rate. But when they stay for a week or two, that's a lot more money than people who stay for weekends. And even if you count the fact that there'll be weekends in between they stay, it's all the weekdays in between where the taxi drivers, the restaurants, the supermarkets, the hotels, all of the beach vendors, etc., could get business that they would not otherwise have gotten. So this is not a small thing. This is not a small thing to our industry that is still trying to recover from COVID. Believe that. But it is what it is. Now, let me just go quickly because I'll hit on this again probably when we have Ashraf to join me. Because the Minister of Education and his counterpart, Tertiary, they have in the past lit up the signal fires, the warning signals. They didn't necessarily, I don't think they gave us specific situations why, but I think some of it was maybe initially a couple months ago, a few months ago, about maybe resource allocation and the education system on a whole. And then recently, the Minister of Education started talking about new data showing spike in classroom violence and student suspensions. And we've had this conversation before, technically. When school violence, at least in the time of talking point, when it became part of the public consciousness that there were increasing levels of school violence, more exposure of that school violence on social media, we spoke about it here multiple times. And we came to the point where, how do you discipline them? Because this is another catch-22 situation. It seemed as though, and we criticized the authorities for the day. We don't necessarily know who decided to do it like this, if it was the ministry, if it was the minister, if it was cabinet, if it was school administration. We criticized the scenario where the rules or the procedure, the proper procedure was after a certain number of suspensions, then you go to expulsion, but that wasn't happening. Now, the Prime Minister has come out to speak to the issue, and she is not entirely wrong when she points out to the fact that you have students who are not improving their behavior, and they keep getting suspended. And then you put them back in the school that they were suspended from, that they were breaking the rules in, that they were disrupting behavior so much that it warranted a suspension, not a detention. You potentially now harm the other students. The problem is, and this is not where I'm starting to get upset. We're still in the realm of reasonable debate. The problem is, the Prime Minister is looking, well, I'm not sure if she used these words, but one of the headlines is, Rise in School Misconduct prompts Prime Minister to push tougher measures. Now already, I kind of look at that kind of funny, and I have to acknowledge, hey, maybe I'm being biased here because I have a preconceived notion now, because it seems as though the general solution that this government has for issues are harsher punishments. Not more effective accountability, not more effective rules enforcement, that's not the same as harsher punishments. Now in this case, potentially rules enforcement is kind of working because in theory you're suspending some of these students. But she's gone on to say, these incidents should be addressed with expulsion in my personal view. If a student cannot behave properly when a teacher is present, you can only imagine how much worse they behave when unsupervised. That is true. That is true. Now, she goes on to also say, it's time for the parents of this minority of misbehaving students to take responsibility for their children's behavior and find some alternative for them to do if they can't behave properly at school. Now, the first part of that I also agree with, depending on the circumstances, right? The second part of that, I do wonder, okay, can you please expand? Because here's the problem with expulsion. We already have concerns that one, gangs are recruiting young. Two, these young people are on the path of being social, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I just can't think of another term right now, social deviants, rule breakers, who will evolve into lawbreakers because of how they view authority. And how they view authority could have been influenced by a multitude of factors. It could have been because they're lashing out at authority, because they feel disadvantaged unfairly. It could be because they were influenced by the wrong people. A lot of things. It could be because either the teachers were mistreating them, or someone in school was mistreating them, or their parents might be mistreating them, and they don't necessarily know how to healthily deal with that. Or it could just be the child is a slacker, and things just snowballed, right? And he doesn't know, or she doesn't know, how to reverse course, because again, these are underdeveloped individuals. That's why there's a whole education system. So in a lot of these cases, if you just expel them without a plan, what's going to happen? Tell me. In my mind, this is a very good way to ensure that there is a vulnerable subset of the population that is easy recruiting for criminal gangs in this country. Easy, easy, easy. I'm not saying that you just not do anything about it, because we've had these discussions before. If you want to remove them from a school, they still need to go to some sort of institution to try to, one, ensure that they don't go further down a rabbit hole of some sort of criminality, and two, to give them an opportunity to find their way back to being a productive member of society, hopefully before they break any laws and run afoul of the criminal justice system and then have a criminal record, because that has its own sets of challenges for someone's future moving forward. But I don't necessarily see that in the Prime Minister's statements. What I see is she just wants harsher measures to look like she's tough on X. And is it necessarily well thought out? Now, to be fair, maybe there's stuff she's just not saying, and I actually have high expectations for the Minister of Education to approach these things responsibly, but well, the Prime Minister kind of went a little too far. Because what I find funny is she is technically identifying the problem. She just has put forward an incomplete solution, and a solution incomplete enough that it could exacerbate the problem, not solve the problem. When you waste your education opportunities and fail your exams, your future will be very difficult because your earning potential will be very limited. Right. As a society, on some level, we should try to ensure that is not allowed to come to pass, because then again, you are just setting up these people to be easily influenced by the gangs. Hey, you see, society don't want you. They have nothing for you. We want you. And we could give you the life that you could only dream of. And they don't care about you, so why should you care about them? So take from them, and if necessarily, kill them. Because if they could, they would kill you, because that's what they're doing right now. They're just killing you slower. When they cut off all avenues for you to survive, what is left? You have to survive. Easy. I just thought all of that nonsense up off the top of my head. But then, in her great degree of professionalism, and I have no specific love for any political party. So you could have inserted anything here, and I would have been extraordinarily annoyed. The only job options available for persons who don't pass their exams are low-paying menial jobs or becoming PNM MPs. First of all, I keep saying I would like the government to be better than the last government. But honestly, and I could be wrong, in fact, I hope I am wrong. I very much would like to be wrong about this. But it just seems to me that the rhetoric coming from this government, they didn't go 0 to 100. They started at like 95, and they're very much aiming to go to like 150. Whereas the PNM kind of scaled up their rhetoric, and even at times had some limits. This political entity, they have barely any limits at all for their mouths. And it is completely unprofessional. So I don't necessarily want to get into all of the bubble with Ashraf later. The opposition leader, of course, criticized the Prime Minister for being dangerously disconnected from reality. The statements made by the Prime Minister on the issue of school violence shows an obvious disconnect from reality and reflects a dangerous lack of understanding of the complex circumstances facing many of our nation's children and families. That might be true. Technically, it's not necessarily true. Again, the Prime Minister might have just been communicating poorly, or she might be willfully ignorant. I'm not entirely sure what's the case in this situation. And by communicating poorly, yes, if you provide an incomplete solution because you want to have a simplified message, if people don't appreciate the message, then dare I say that equates to it being a poor example of communication. And the opposition leader goes on, the role of a responsible government is not to discard struggling students, but to guide, support, and rehabilitate them. Now, I would argue the PNM leaned too far in that direction. And the current government is threatening to lead too far in the other direction. But one of the issues that we have is, do we have enough of the alternative institutions, and are they effective at the process of the next step? You can't be a normal school, you're disruptive to normal school, but we can't just leave you on the streets. Where do we put you? Do we have enough places? Are they effective enough? Are they safe enough? Are they responsible enough? Because they have horror stories of certain institutions, right? I think there's a case going on right now about one of those institutions. But the opposition leader, she, I think, I don't know if she went on further about the whole, the job at the PNM. Dr. Nan Gatsby-Dolly, she decided to respond in similar fashion. Quote, Kamala, if you were not an old lady, I would tell you where to haul a body part, which we all hold there, end quote. Stick a pin on that and note I said she responded in similar fashion. Because she did say that the Prime Minister's statement, this is, again, Dr. Nan Gatsby-Dolly, former Minister of Education, she did say that the Prime Minister's statement was totally disrespectful and shameful, but as I said, she responded in similar fashion. Now, Kuwa South MP Badri Pararat, this is how it's reported, Minister of Public Utilities. One of the ministers in the office of the Prime Minister, who seemingly now no longer speaks on behalf of the office of the Prime Minister. His response to Dr. Nan Gatsby-Dolly, I guess like Rowley, she too shares this sick, psychotic obsession with people's body parts. Thanks, though, for proving the PM correct. Hashtag disgusting Dolly. To that, and this is where I got exceptionally annoyed. First of all, because I find the professionalism of one Minister of Public Utilities, Barry Padarath, to be blatantly non-existent. But second, how can you say that with a straight face? Is one statement proof enough for you? Because dare I say, one of your cabinet colleagues if what Dr. Nayan Gaspidoli said was an obsession, one of your colleagues in cabinet, in your own political party, so we're not talking about someone that was brought in from the outside, like say the Attorney General John Jeremy, or say Minister in the Ministry of Housing, Philip Alexander, but his counterpart, Minister in the Ministry of Housing, Anna Roberts. If one statement is enough to prove a sick obsession, then dare I say, is your colleague, Minister Anna Roberts, does he have a beyond the sick obsession for the anatomy of one of the opposition MPs? I mean, his sick obsession is to such a degree that it even influenced and caught on with the Prime Minister herself. I saw her, I heard her echo the same sentiments. That is beyond a sick obsession, apparently. Because your colleague repeatedly, from the campaign trail up till now, apparently was displaying the favorite part of the human anatomy in all the land, and that is to say the part that is of Stuart Young's. Somehow it is the thing that he speaks about the most. So if we were a man of principles, maybe at the very least you would advise your own Prime Minister, don't go down that road. Don't follow that nonsense. But this is from a man who appears to be drunk on stage interrupting an event that he has no authority to do so, in a display of what seems to be sheer arrogance, makes a fool of himself, and then tries to say, I wasn't drunk. I mean, it took the PRM some time to get to that point, and I don't know if in certain cases, in terms of communication, they got to a point this bad. Because when Dr. Rowley said, I am not in your bedroom, and a golf course is like a woman, when he said those things, first of all, the I am not in your bedroom, that actually was a real pertinent point. He just said it extremely poorly and derailed an important law enforcement conversation with a controversial communication. When he said a golf course is like a woman, I get it. I understand. That's not something he should have said. He didn't repeat it. He didn't repeat it like the minister in the Ministry of Housing. That's point number one. But point number two, and I said this just now, and I'll end here with this. We wanted better than, not just as bad. Don't try and justify your nonsense saying, well, the PNM did nonsense too. And some people might say, oh, the PNM did worse nonsense. Hello. Exactly what did Dr. Keith Rowley say repeatedly to display a level of obsession on the level of the minister in the Ministry of Housing? Someone please tell me. Someone please tell me. Now, remember what I said about Dr. Nayan Gaspidoli. I said she responded in similar fashion. Dr. Nayan Gaspidoli, the whole point of competing is not to win a schoolyard argument. This is the governance of the country, not just office politics. Not just who could have the base go, ooh, you really got them, boy. No, it's about showing a higher degree of professionalism, a higher degree of ability, a higher degree of principles. So I have said this about the government. We wanted better than. If the opposition wants to present themselves as a viable alternative, they cannot sink now to the level of the government. When the government does nonsense, they have to rise above it. If they fail to do so, they are no better than. They are no better than. Yes, it made you feel good in the moment. Yes, it might have maybe come across well with your base, but it's still unprofessional. And this is where our politics has reached. This is what I'm talking about this morning. I'm not going to lie. It is extraordinarily disappointing Notice that none of these yahoos say everybody wins anymore. Notice that. I wonder why. The fact of the matter is, at the rate things are going, sooner rather than later, the PNM will win another election. By default. Because dare I say, now I must question, did the UNC win the last election? Not because they proved to be the better candidate, not because they genuinely had all the answers, but they won it by default. Because again, the voting levels dropped from 58% to 54%. About 80,000 PNM voters potentially just didn't vote for anybody. They walked away. That is not a recipe for having a mandate to say we could do what we want, your majority notwithstanding. That is not one of those key ingredients that suggest that. It doesn't matter if you like the PNM or not. You could hate the PNM if you are someone that is objective. Just because you hate the PNM doesn't mean that you should approve the Prime Minister sending unnecessary, unprofessional insults to her political opponents. That is gutter-level politics. That has nothing to do with finding solutions. That has nothing to do with professionalism, integrity. That has nothing to do with ethics or principles. It's literally just politics by charisma. And if that's what wins in this country, then now, for the second time in my life, I regret being here. But you know what? This is politics just about everywhere. So there's no escaping it. I am just universally disgusted. Let's take a break. Hopefully Ashraf is here. We'll get more into the practical issues of the day. Stay tuned.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan, and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2, match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3, search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
The fluid retention occurs in the lungs, and they get short of breath, particularly with exertion. And there's a particularly condition where when lying down, they feel short of breath and have to use a lot of pillows. That's a sign that the shortness of breath might be due to heart failure.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
And we're back on talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by disaster management expert and soon to be completely retired police inspector, acting ASP Ashraf Ali.
Good morning, Sean. I am a bit scared at this point in time.
Yes.
Sean, the way that Sean is behaving at this point in time, we're really wondering is what's going on with him.
Well, let's go further in this conversation because
good morning, Sean.
As a police officer, you would have had some experience with regards to some of the more extreme examples of this situation, both because the police have had to intervene in school violence in the last few years, really, and then also because now, to what extent are gangs recruiting younger and younger people and who might be their targets, right? That's my concern in this situation. Because the Prime Minister has come out and, okay, there's a problem. And I have already said, and you might have missed this, that the problem existed long before. We've had this discussion on Talking Point. Part of the problem is, for whatever reason, the schools are not necessarily adhering to the prescribed procedure, because you're not supposed to keep suspending students indefinitely, right? I understand the hesitation because the prescribed procedure is expulsion. And I believe the fear is, well, if we just expel them, then what do? Right? You leave them to their own devices, you leave them to be influenced by whatever, and it might end up worse. Now, the caveat, of course, is, do we have the institutions in place to be the next step, whatever the next step is? Because we've already had situations between lawsuits and closing down of facilities where there are horror stories in a lot of these things on how they're run and how they're managed and so on, right? Now, I do know under the previous administration, and I'm not too sure if it was continued or discontinued even before the election. So this is not a political thing. I do know that they had specific programs under the Office of the Prime Minister, but those were not meant to deal with the scope of what we see. Those were more for like very specific situations in families and with children, not necessarily just school violence going out of control. But the Prime Minister is looking, according at least to one media narrative, to have harsher measures to curb school violence. And my thing is, it's difficult not to give that perspective or that opinion. It's difficult not to give it weight, given when we see the track record when it comes to road traffic penalties. Let's just make it harsher. When it comes to violence, what is her public utterances? Empty the matic, or in terms of the drug smugglers, kill them all, right? Now, listen, I'm not saying that it is a clear apples to apples comparison. I'm saying this is the environment, this is the narrative that they have created that I wish they didn't create, because people will interpret it, and trust me on this, they will interpret it worse than how I'm interpreting it currently, right? Even if it's mainly just talk. It's talk that you put out there. But more importantly, I don't necessarily have the capacity to give the Prime Minister the benefit of the doubt that when she says expulsion, it's not just limited to expulsion. In part because, as far as I'm aware, and also based on what Twitter said, so this is not only what Twitter said, if there's, first of all, Twitter is disputing that there's even an increase in school violence incidents, which I'm not necessarily. But they just said, if there's an increase in terms of children deviant behavior in the classroom, we have a situation where the student support services with social workers and so on have not gotten their contract renewed. And the head of Twitter said many of them remain unemployed and schools left without any such staff members. So I kind of have a problem, given the fact that I'm seeing a reduction in social support services, to then assume, oh, it won't just be expulsions. There'll be other things to backstop it, to ensure that students don't fall through the cracks.
Sean, this is a conversation that has been held on several different layers, from from high-level politics all the way down to the ministry. Everybody have their 2 cents to throw into this. Let's be realistic. And there comes a point in time, and I'm not supporting any side of any statement, there comes a point in time that we need to address what is really taking place. School indiscipline pops up occasionally, rise and fall as the case may be, but it is not subsiding, right?
When you say it might be increasing, but it doesn't go down. It kind of just lulls and then increases again.
Yes, we wait until when incidents rise, then to have more conversation about it, and this is what we're going to do, so we're going to do, so we're going to do. There are systems that is put in place, and there's a system in the ministry for discipline in terms of suspension and how you do suspension and when suspension is required. Nothing wrong with that. That's good. And I'm going to use it as an example. I'm going to use a parallel example. Why we're in this position? You execute some of the use the word execute, sir. You address some of those issues by applying the disciplinary process within the school environment, in the administration. Suspension, first suspension, second suspension, third suspension.
I think it's supposed to go up to 6. I could be wrong.
Let's say it reaches maximum 6 suspension. And at the 6th, at the 7th time, that child has not changed its behavioral pattern. One, who are we going to blame? First things first, we blame the system. We blame the school is not doing what they're supposed to do. We blame social program is leaving the child. They don't have a lack of social program in some instances, but the social system and the counseling services are not supportive enough. You blame the parents in the home.
Yeah.
You blame society. Who's really to blame? Every one of these these categories of individuals that are groups of have a responsibility to play. All of them is not responsible for the child holistically. They have a part to play. But when we start to talk about parents being held accountable for the actions of their children or the inactions of their children in some situations, we start to push it aside and say, society is this and society that. My view is this. If a child has no discipline in his home, has no respect for his parents, what respect is going to be exhibited in school? What are they going to comply with any rules in the schools if they have no respect for the rules and show no respect in the school? You know why? Because the location where they're supposed to have some level of degree of where the parents are supposed to set in, and I'm not blaming the parents alone there. Sometimes there are parents who don't even know how to address some of these challenges with the children that we have in our current society. Right? But I am simply saying this. We have to start taking responsibility. Now, same thing we're talking about traffic laws. You increasing the laws, or increasing the penalty for certain offenses. Is it deterring them? No. They are still doing it. They are still doing it. So the Prime Minister's statement would be, in my opinion, we have to have stronger measures. I will take that. I do not know what is the stronger measures. Hold on. I don't know what is stronger measures. I am yet to hear the stronger measures. Good? So I am just leaving it from that perspective. It is not about the stronger measures alone, because we could see in our laws that you increase penalties. They are still doing it. We're in a state of emergency, Sean, where it is supposed to be, persons supposed to be checking them, criminal elements supposed to be at bay, at check. Persons supposed to say, listen, I should not want to commit an offense in a state of emergency situation, during a state of emergency, because I might be arrested and be put in jail. It's still happening. It's still happening. I am not going to state of emergency right now because we think that. But when you look at what is happening in society right now, we have, and I say the reality is, we are losing a generation.
More than one, I would argue.
Well, with overlapping into another one.
Yeah.
And what we're losing in generation is we're not losing the generation to crime alone. We're losing the generation because we do not know how to deal with the generation from one generation to the other. We believe all the measures that were supposed to be dealt with in the first generation would apply in this generation and third generation.
One of the things I want to say, I don't believe the Prime Minister used the term stronger measures. That was the headline of an article.
Right, sorry.
She said she gave 2 measures, expulsion and holding parents accountable. Now, I will agree there will be certain circumstances where holding parents accountable might be required, right? And we can get into that later. With regards to expulsion, I will also agree that, yes, if you have a large enough student population, statistically, there will be some who there is no other recourse. You have to hold the student accountable. But as you pointed out, look at all the other stakeholders involved. And these are immature minds, not fully developed people. Expulsion, to some extent, one, it kind of just puts the onus on the student. It doesn't fix all of the other issues. But also, two, for some of these students, they don't mind being suspended.
Psychologists.
Will expulsion be an effective measure against them? Some of them might welcome it.
Many psychologists will argue with me. I'm not a psychologist. Right? And I'm not making a psychological statement here. But some of these children, who we believe are children, behave worse than adults.
I don't doubt that.
And they know fully well the right and wrong in the age.
But here's the trick. The trick is, how do you determine? Yes, there will be some obvious cases where they're involved in violence way beyond the norm of student behavior. But in a lot of instances, you will be seeing, because there's a drop in serial killers in the United States. One of the theories is because, well, they're catching children who are starting off with deviant behavior and fixing it there before they go beyond the point of no return, right? How do you determine which are the students who are just lackadaisical and careless and they run afoul of the authorities in a minor way, but it snowballs in an innocent way?
Exactly.
And the ones who, they have a warped mindset, whether bad influence or whatever, that you need to have much harsher measures with.
I am simply saying in this context, if your child has deviant behavior, I'm not saying the child is a criminal, yeah?
Yes.
I'm just saying child has deviant behavior for whatever reasons. Parents, and some parents, not all, some parents need to be held accountable. Accountable does not mean, in my opinion, they have to pay some fine or be put in jail for something like that. I'm saying accountable. Accountable in the context that what have you done for your child?
Because in part, those parents can't come around and sue the school and say the school did wrong. But now here's the thing. I do think, and this phenomenon happens around the world, and I know that it happens here, right? Either the school or someone in authority or the parents, they don't want to address the issue with the child. They want to cover it up and save face, right? And with regards to parents, I don't have a recent example locally, right? But I know that this is just a thing for some parents. Their child could do no wrong. No matter, and obviously we ain't reached somewhere like drugs or murder or anything that bad, right? But there will be some parents who they would even protect their children from that. We've heard the stories. I do know, and I can't go into it, I've spoken to this with Arun on Monday, right? There is a situation where, as far as I'm aware, a school attempted to keep under wraps a gang rape situation in the school.
Right.
Right? So in this case, when parents want to sweep things on the rug, definitely you don't want to address it. We hold you accountable. But it's not limited. Unfortunately, the situations, as you pointed out, it's all the stakeholders.
And that is why I'm saying some of the challenges we face with the current generation and the generation if we don't address them the way we're supposed to address it, now the judicial system is in a mess.
Yes.
Because of backlog and everything like that. But then there are delinquent children who may have gotten themselves in some criminal activities. They are not bad in terms of they are bad apples. They may have just...
not all children that have done criminal acts are evil.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that. They just need some more additional guidance. But then we have the youth camps, and people feel that sending the child to a youth camp or sending them to I want to use this word very loosely, a remedial camp. Right? I'm not saying what it is because I don't want anybody to say a target.
Which camp? Yes.
They send to a remedial camp. If you send them to a remedial camp, which will address some of the indiscipline, but at the same time, because you're supposed to have social services, all the categories of social services there to identify some of the issues that it may be deeper issues than just deviant behavior, right? Underlying issues that they don't do. But the thing about it is that some of the schools, and it's unfair to some of the social workers that have in the schools.
Well, that's if they have any anymore.
No, it's lacking,
yes.
right? Some of the social workers and some of the counselors in schools, it's difficult for them to manage multiple incidents in schools because it takes time. If parents are not willing to step up to because they need the support from the parents at the same time, you know. And I'm saying that parents need to take some level, because if they tell you to do certain things.
So I know a social worker. She never told me anything about a specific case, but I would get general terms or impressions of, well, it's not an easy job. And this is at the primary school level, where you have students with whatever issues, right? I mean, I don't know what they are, but just the fact that they had busy social workers, right, who were emotionally drained, right? I don't know what the situation with the children are, but I know the situation of the individual who had to deal with her own emotional aftermath of right? It's not all fun and games, right? And the parents themselves don't seem to always understand or appreciate what the school and the counselors are trying to do for the children, whether it is just they don't know better or they're willfully being harmful to their child because for whatever reason, right? It's varied. And I think it just goes to because ideally, if you could kind of try to solve it at the primary level, you would have less at the secondary level, and you would have less of the more extreme behavior. But it's, as you say, it's not just to chuck them in an institution, right? It takes a lot of work and effort and understanding. And dare I say, as a society, what do we know of dealing with this? Because everybody wants to say rehabilitation, but we don't actually practice it very well. So what is the actual measures beyond, because it can't just be suspension or expulsion. But that seems to be, when it comes to the government, and I don't just mean the cabinet and the UNC, just the government, public servants, the Ministry of Education, the schools, etc. It seems like that's where they're stuck. Suspension, expulsion. We don't know what else to do after that. We have nothing else after that. However, I mean, I think they have the youth training for the MILAT. I don't know if that's still ongoing.
Well, yeah.
But I mean, again, that is one tool. Not all problems are a nail by which you hammer it down.
True.
Right? So what are the various tools that we have to try to deal with this? Because I fear one of the things is similar to the criminal justice system. Just the sheer number of incidents and rule breakers reach a point where that also is causing the system to break down, because I can't just deal with the sheer scope of the problem.
So we have a bigger problem than just what is taking place in schools. From the home into schools, which is normally literally a second home, right? Because you spend a lot of time in that environment. And that is the window into society. So if what you're putting out of the window, if what is coming out of the windows, or the doors, if you're coming through that door and what you're putting out into society, what we expect is going to happen, what type of citizen are we going to have in society? That is what the window is. And this is where a lot of the issues, that when you keep talking about parenting, parents need to take responsibility, where we harp on the whole context of long ago where a child was, a community raising a child, right? We can't use those things in our environment anymore because it's not relevant to what is taking place.
So let me ask you, what do you think is the key aspect of the village? I think I know what it is, right? I don't know if you want me to just cut to the chase.
Go ahead.
Consistent attention, care, and engagement. Consistent.
And the village is literally not your neighbors anymore. The group of individuals I'm speaking about, I just call out here, that category is no considered the village.
Is, when you had the village of old, it was natural. Hey, you're playing with your neighbors' kids, right? And the aunties or the uncles on the streets, whoever, if your parents not there, they're looking out for everybody. So you're getting a level of consistent attention. But now...
No, we have lost that, right? Because... we lost that because of economics.
Yes.
Right? And other different factors.
But also, and I'm not saying teachers of yesteryear were these great saints of compassion and patience, right? Everybody throughout the generations have teachers that they feel they didn't like them, the teachers were bad, whatever. But the stakeholders that you mentioned, you listed, to what extent can we say that they all show that level of consistent attention and understanding, right?
So that there lies some of the challenges we will be facing right now.
Because I know I had an interview on Tuesday with an independent film director locally that makes movies locally, and he treats the people who want to be his cast and crew. He will take care of them, but he ensures that they are not involved in anything, and he uses the opportunity that he's providing as a hard incentive. You want to be a part of this, you can't be involved in none of that street stuff, right? But I think part of the reason why he gets kids to come on board is because not only is it something different and new and exciting, but also he's showing them a level of attention. That's like, hey, what's going on in your life? Everything okay? You need any help for something? Don't be involved on the block. Don't be lying on the streets doing foolishness. It's not just well, I'm in my office, and if you break a rule, you come and see me, I punish you, and that's the nature of our relationship.
But we are doing a serious injustice to the children of our society at this point in time when we do not acknowledge that they are going on the wrong path.
Yes.
Adults, and I'm using the word adults, forget parents anymore. I'm saying adults sees children doing certain type of behavior, operating in certain type of behavior, and they condone them activities.
Or they
condone some of those activities.
Now, when you say condone, is it condone because they actively approve it, or is it that they're not intervening?
By not intervening alone also is part of condoning. By making shares on social media and talking about this behavior, not addressing this behavior, right? Because, and I'm not saying that the adults are wrong. They have their reasons, because there's a lot of reasons why you don't involve yourself in certain things when you see children behaving a certain way, because there are consequences towards it right now, right? So persons believe that, listen, we have a hot plate scenario. You see that? That's too hot for me to touch. I am not going to put my hand on it, I'll get burned. Because you might intervene, and you, in your best interest, to intervene in an incident where you have children, some parent decide, listen, you can't touch my child. You're not acknowledging the child was wrong. But what you want to do is sue the individual and say, you didn't not to touch my child, or touch my child. But the parents just condone, you just condone the wrong actions of your child.
And this is where I will agree. Yeah, parents like that need to be held accountable. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if the child steals something, the child going to pay it back?
So if it is part of the process that they want to deal with now, and if the Prime Minister has, and the ministry is going to put in something extra, I am all for putting in whatever extra that will make some sense. I would simply say this. My humble suggestion, this is just my opinion. If parents are now starting to be held accountable for the actions of their children, it may make them, the parents, a little more active in the lives of the children. Parents don't want to go PTA and do anything at all. When the child is, even when you're going in school, and you go in school and you had to sit down and talk to we have parents, teachers, you want to go and listen to hear what is happening with your child. You don't want to go, you're sending somebody else, some other adult. No, I didn't ask the adult to come, they asked for you, because I want to hear how my child is behaving in school. Tell me, if I will chastise my child, if it's the case.
Or if it is you send another adult, because I have been in that situation due to geographical limitations.
Yes.
then the parent is supposed to, like in my case, quiz the representative, what to go on, what they say, XYZ. You know, be engaged as much as possible. If your circumstances don't allow it, there are still ways to be engaged.
Teachers are not the parent of the child.
Yes.
They are the teachers of the child, right? They are teaching the child.
Similar to not intervening in other people's children. There are certain things a teacher should not talk to a child about.
And then we come back with police.
Well, yes.
Are not parents.
Yes.
Of the nation. They are not responsible for your child, where your child go and all that. They are doing policing and enforcement of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. That is a big problem we have here.
Now,
so we have to have a clear understanding as to where we want to go with this, because putting the blame on everybody else is not going to solve the problem. You know, we could have this conversation again.
And the thing is, this is not a new conversation.
It is not a new conversation.
Right? And part of my disappointment, because I understand you might not want to go there, but given the government's track record, and I'm speaking about cabinet itself, on how they view punishment in general, and listen, if you have something else that you're just not telling us, why? Because literally throughout the entirety of this show, there has been no situation where a politician holds information back unnecessarily and somehow the public messaging works out better. Right? So this is why I don't understand. If it's not limited to expulsions and holding parents accountable, because in my mind, part of that suggests a certain level of laziness, because that's like a policing. Right? And we're not getting to the SOE just yet, but it is an example, because to me, there is no attempt to improve law enforcement's procedure, improve the criminal justice system, improve the laws to make collecting evidence better, improve the laws to make prosecuting gangsters, you know, more reasonable. It's just, oh, we're going to state of emergency. And even in a state of emergency, you still can't collect evidence to charge people. That's why I had to let them go when the last one ends. So in that, when you take that, the whole kill them all statements, the whole harsher measures on just about everything statements, right? I can't assume that, no, they know what they're doing and they're going to have a measured approach. And I think the Minister of Education might have more than enough experience and knowledge and capability, but I fear it's two things that's going to hold anything back. And they're not necessarily things that you should expect the government to be able to overcome easily. One is budget, because we're talking about more staff in terms of counselors, but also it's not, I'm trying to get, he didn't use the word security, but I guess you could say safety officers, I think is what the head of tutor said, right?
Yes.
Just support, because teachers can't, I mean, we spoke about it before. The teacher, the male teacher that basically was being hit because he couldn't swing back, it was, I think it was female students, right?
See, we keep, and that is what we keep doing. We keep policing the school. We keep increasing the security in the school, increasing the number of police officers in the school, safety officers in school. It's about increasing it's about policing.
Well, I mean, I would hope that the safety officers would have different training to police and security when it comes to dealing with students, right? But maybe I'm wrong, but just because we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
Also, just the fact that, again, what are the institutions that are the alternative? Or you could have, say, you're given too much trouble in the school has a place to try to, not to put you in exile and forget about you, but to keep you from disrupting the rest of the students while still trying to engage with the students to get them back on track, to provide them with an education, to try to figure out, okay, what is troubling you so that we could solve it.
Provided with a free education, right?
I know, right?
See, and that is one of the...
No, but I'm just saying, right, to have institutions or measures beyond just expulsion and suspension, to some extent it's going to take money. It's also going to take political and societal will.
There's a lot to be dealt with when you look at what is happening in schools. The curriculum alone is not the issue. I'm talking about
I actually do wonder if, because they kept changing the curriculum so often, it was causing issues with teacher effectiveness. And in some cases, if a student falls behind.
It may have
that's minor.
Yeah, it may have some.
That's minor.
It may have some impact in
I
it.
think.
It may have some impact in it. But when you look at what is happening, is if you look at it from this, your school life is what you are looking to develop a child to come into society. If there's a difficulty in if you're having difficulty in home and you expect to have some sort of satisfaction in school, and you are in the school environment is worse off than what you're having in school because home, because you might have some issues home. You go in school, you're being bullied. You're in and around a negative circle. When you come out of that, you go back home. You may have some issues because you might be living in an environment that is not conducive to learning, right? You have gangs, gangs and all kinds of things taking place in there. You may live in an environment where it's just so isolated, in a community where so isolated, you can't talk to your neighbors. You want the child alone, because it is not only about that. Yeah, there's a lot of working parents right now that don't even have time to see. It's just about coming and going.
I understand. This is one of those things where it's already a free education. What more can we provide? Because the bill is not small. The thing is, I think at the end of the day, some investment into solving this problem beyond just quick cash penalty solutions needs to happen. I would start from the primary system, and as a caller said, your fears of losing a generation, that might be a foregone conclusion whether we want to admit it or not. And not that we are abandoning the generation, but that to some extent some of the older ones might be so far gone, there's literally nothing we can do. Literally, right? We are not set up to treat with the problem, and the time it would take to set up, they would have aged out of the education system.
At 16, 17, between 16 and 17, you're out of secondary school.
Yeah.
The
deviant ain't going to Form 6.
Right. 16 to... If how many of those reach university or in Form 6? That is what I'm saying. When you look at the vast amount of children that is coming out of this education system in secondary school between the age of 16 and 17, not many of them...
that's my concern.
There's a big population of your working population.
But because of budget limitations, ideally you would start both at the secondary level and at the primary level, right? Not that you ignore the secondary level, but I think some sort of focus on the primary level should happen, because that's when the kids are the most vulnerable. And that might, and at the end of the day, it's similar to crime fighting. Right. You need short-term measures, but you need the long-term measures as well.
So yes, you could start at the primary school level. There's a certain type of procedures or things to deal with on the primary school level. But when you talk about 16 to 17, every single year there is a percentage, a large population of students who coming through that door into society. No amount of subjects, limited amount of subjects, lack of experience in working in anywhere, already have some deviant behavior, believe that society owes them out something, and they're back into the whole society. Now I am saying, from that percentage, there is also the percentage that we have to worry about, because those are the prime targets for criminal elements.
The more society gives freeness, the more the population will feel entitled. I'm just saying, maybe our formula might be a little bit off. We have Digger Martin on the line. Caller, good morning. You on here?
Good morning, Sean, and a very good morning to the ASP. Sean, I listened attentively to the discussion on this school violence. My take on it, the core problem is the home, parenting. And one of the things people have not understood, the best auditor in the world with respect to parenting is the mother. Once you could fix that relation, the mother is the one who guides the child right through the system, going to school, everything. We cannot expect a teacher to change a broken child. So if we could get the home to be fixed properly and we encourage proper parenting, we will get it right. The former administration said our children were hyenas in a jungle. And what did they do? They did nothing. You have a former Minister of Education said the misbehavior by school children, they know exactly what homes they come from. They are supportive of a particular party. So that tells you how we look at the system, and the education system has been, what should I say, for the last 6-7 years, has been abandoned. They have decimated it. We're not creating the environment for the child to flourish. A former Prime Minister said the future of the country lies in the book bag. What have we done to make sure that book bag is wholesome? Nothing, nothing, nothing. We're now trying to fix it.
Thank you, caller. I don't want to spend too much more time on this topic, but I will just say this. I kind of agree with the caller, except I don't think teachers could solve the problem if the home is in a bad way. But I do think they can make it worse. Because I think we all know of stories of unprofessional and teachers who are not dedicated to their job. And when you have these students who are in these disadvantaged or problem home situations, those kind of teachers ain't helping. The good teachers can't solve the problem, but they could at the very least provide the child with some positive influence in their life that could hopefully be, to some extent, the basis of a solution, or at least to ensure that the child doesn't totally get lost in society, right? Because the unprofessional teachers, they don't wanna give, dedicate time and attention to any specific student that they just deem as a miscreant. They don't have to hell with them, right? So also, the roles of fathers are sorely underestimated in society, right? You kind of need two parents. Whole modern family orientation notwithstanding, right? Two parents helps lighten the load, but also there's something about having fathers for just certain functions that the mother can't replicate. Similar to having mothers for certain functions that the father cannot easily replicate. Yes, single parents can be successful, but that is an acknowledgement of an incredible accomplishment that should not be something we should take for granted. It could just happen easily. It's not easy. That's why single mothers or single fathers should be celebrated, because that is an Everest of a parenting challenge when they're successful in doing that. But wanted to, for the time that we have left, maybe a little over 10 minutes at best, state of emergency. A couple of things. One, the Minister of Defense is calling for more foreign assistance from the US. But two, the situation currently, they're looking to now get it, I guess, renewed in Parliament for 3 months or whatever, right now that it's been declared. I do find it interesting that in the law, you're supposed to renew it maybe a couple times, up to 6 months, simple majority, and then you need a special majority. And they basically just ended the SOE and restarted the process, what, a month later?
See, no, yes, that was supposed to be, but remember I don't know if this was plan B. Remember they said...
Well, I guess they had these, I assume ZOSOs were plan A.
ZOSOs was plan A to alleviate a state of emergency again.
Right. You don't know if it was, they were going to do this no matter what if ZOSO failed.
I don't know.
Right.
Right, but based on the information as to, in the public domain as to why the state of emergency was called again, because of the potential threats, all of that, all the potential
and the violence. They put both reasons.
Like I said last show, that there was a potential. I said it on the last show that when we watch the potential of threats and what it is that is brewing, and what you're seeing surfacing when you pick up all the different type of things that's taking place, you don't want to go back on that road.
Yes.
Now maybe all the intelligence and information that they have is for the purpose of not suppressing alone, and I'm hoping that it's not about suppress. I am hopeful I am hopeful that this SOE or this new SOE is not in the same vein as the rest of the SOEs, because I am hopeful. I just say I'm hopeful.
It's just, my problem is we had that hope the last go around because their SOEs followed up a P&M SOE. So in my mind, I'm like, look, the past behavior is the Band-Aid. Yes, the SOE is not a solution in and of itself, right? I hope people understand that. But you could, as you say, the SOE provides opportunities to do things. But we don't see those things.
You know that there are a lot of persons at this point in time, when you listen to all the commentary on social media and all the other things, they're actually calling for these Zozos now. Yeah.
Well, hold on to that. We do have. I do think Tobago might have preferred these Zozos, but we do have San Fernando line. Call it good morning, you're here.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning, morning.
Morning, Mr. Ali.
Morning, sir.
Sean, I have to disagree with Mr. Ali and agree with you. Jumping right into the last point there. I am no longer hopeful.
Okay.
And I'm not, let me say this about this. I expected, and I said this to you on your program, Sean. After Carnival, I said to you, when the state of emergency ended in January, I said they're going to bring another state of emergency after Carnival. And then these also came in, that failed, and in true fashion, that is what happened. However, to fully put the blame on the government, it's a hard sell, and let me tell you why. Because policing has been failing in the country, and now you have a government who has entered power and now have to deal with the level of criminality and lawlessness that is Trinidad and Tobago. It's a difficult situation that they have found themselves in. And you know, Sean, I have no political party, but it is policing that has failed the country over the last 40 years. And we are where we are today. What's other things, the education system that you're talking about, and that type of thing. I want to jump in quickly to that.
Quick.
The gentleman from Diego Martin, and talking about the mothers. It is parenting. I have seen homes where parents, where mothers were housewives, they were the ones primarily seen about the children, and bad seeds came out of those households, when the mother was around more than the father. The issue, Sean, is that parents are not getting involved as they should from the beginning of their children's school life. When your child enters school, I am telling you the facts here. If you go to the NPTA or the other PTA, the other parents association, they will tell you. Ask them what is the percentage of parents that come to these meetings that they have in schools. And I am telling you, it is less than 20% of the parents that show up for these meetings. Our parents not just send them to school, and they're not involved in the children's lives.
And the reality
they're not involved in
yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Ali.
No, I just want to support you with that, because the reality is that when you look at our percentage that show up in schools, those are the ones who care about, who have concern with their children. Those are not the ones who have that need the assistance, or should say have the children that cause a problem.
Exactly. Exactly, Sean. I had 4 children go to school. No, the last one is in university right now, and you had to get involved. If parents don't get involved, to the point where I had issues on my job when I am in the country about coming to work a particular time, because I said to them, my children are going to end up in jail. So I used to drop my children to school on mornings and then go to work. And it is when you have to have that engagement with your children, Sean.
Yeah.
Talking all the time, telling them what is good and what is bad. Things like you see people breaking the law by the traffic light in the morning when everybody hurry, and the children saying, "Daddy, why we have to wait?" And you have to explain to them why we not breaking the law.
Yep.
When they see everybody else doing it. It's a lot of different things. You have to get them involved in organizations, in a little scout group, they have to be in dance. If it's girls, you have them in some dance group, you have them in some ballet, you have them in some physical activity on a weekend and after school. But you have to be there as the parents. You have to be there because there are so many influences around your child.
Yes.
You have to ring fence your children, Sean. You have to ring fence them by being there with other family members. If the grandparents are around tango, the grandparents might be around, they might be able to chip in a little bit. My father used to take my first 2 children to football first. They started in football because of the grandfather. And these are the type of things that society is missing. Parents figure, I drop them to school and that is it. We had a situation, so I was involved in a football club, and when we had a parents meeting, the lady said to us that her son is still in discipline. She bring him here to get discipline, and he's still in discipline. And I had to answer that lady. I said, "Ma'am, you bring your son here on a Saturday for 3 hours, and you expect us here to take that 3 hours out of 7 days a week and discipline your child for you? But then you need to take your child out of here." And that is the mentality that you get. I mean, that lady could be speaking from a point of frustration because she didn't know what to do with her child.
Yeah.
Because he was, but Sean, it is parents. This thing starts with parents. You can't have a child going to school and that child reach standard 5 and can't read.
Caller, I'll have to.
And that child in a household.
But I'll have to cut you there because we have another caller and we have to cut the show.
Understand, sure. Now you and Mr. Ali have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for understanding. We have Dabadi on the line. Last caller. Quick, Dabadi. Good morning. We have Dabadi. Are you there? Caller, good morning.
Morning. Yes, we Ashraf. Long time no see, long time no talk. Pleasant morning to San Fernando.
Morning.
Sean, the question is for both you and Mr. ASP Ashraf. But more so for the ASP. ASP, we are looking at a policy that started by putting police officers in schools. And from my experience, you'll know that I'm a retired officer. Don't believe that the youngsters and them who are placed in school will do that for the rest of the service. I don't see a career coming out of that. So I don't know if the Welfare Association has done anything about it yet, far.
Okay.
But I am now being against that permanent look that the minister is looking at to put police officers in school. I'll hang up. You'll have a nice weekend and hear your comments.
Thank you, caller. You want to go first?
Yeah, so I agree with the caller.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be a temporary, a temporary stopgap measure for what was taking place. A permanent structure should not be police. They should not be called police officers because police officers are not supposed to be in schools.
Yes.
Schools, if they are retired police officers or even persons who choose who want to be part of law, who want a career,
like an SRP,
want a career in law enforcement, but the avenue of law enforcement would have been school safety officer or something like that within the school environment. Right. That is the path they would have to take. So, but I agree. You can't have a police officer the state pay for, and his entire career is in the school. Now, here's the challenge with them that I continue to say: when you have temporary measures like this in school, you will not get the effect that you would want, because it's supposed to be a long-term effect. Because you have to be in the school 24/7 during the whole school period, right? All the days of the school to build that that level of respect that the students want to do to give with you, because they're not going to respect the uniform alone. They're going to respect the officer and how they treat with them. There are certain issues. This is a long-term thing that you have to deal with. That is why when you have persons in the school environment like this, teachers, counselors, they don't change them just like that, because they're the bills, because you'll have to sit down and identify some issues with the child and then start to assist in going forward. But just going there to be a disciplinarian where the child has an issue with authoritarian figures is just going to add fuel to the fire.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing, because initially, the first thing I went to before the caller made the point, the students don't even respect the police officers sometimes, right? They'll have the fight in front of the police officers, right? They kind of know the limits of how the police officers can operate, right? But more importantly, yes, a police officer, if you keep swapping them out, they never could get the consistency to learn the students so that they understand who are the real rule breakers and the serious offenders and who are just being kids. And they know how to have that personal touch that you need, because if you're just a heavy-handed, unemotional, authoritarian figure, a lot of kids are not going to necessarily respond to that, because at times things could slip through the cracks and you will get unfair outcomes because you're not putting the time in to understand the situation fully. So you need a permanent presence, but as Ashraf was pointing out, that can't be the career of a police officer, because you're not going to have experience on the streets. You're not going to have experience dealing with violent offenders. You're not going to have experience responding to kidnappings or robberies or murder situations. And then when the public asks, well, why you don't have experience responding to these things? Well, because you're stuck some of these guys basically being something that is less than a TTPS police officer, while paying and putting them through training and equipping them and all of that, but they're not actually doing their job, they're doing someone else's job. So you need to find someone else to do that job. Now, we have to wrap things up, but, I just also want to say, the systems for school and education and all of that, I think they were put in place when we had the village, right? We're not necessarily going far enough. We lament losing the village, but we also need to understand the systems were meant to have the village. Without the village, the systems also, I think, are breaking down.
Yes.
Right? So now back to the SOE. I'm like the caller. I understand that you hope that this will be better, but think about it this way. If this was not a planned response, there's even less reason to believe that they have long-term ideas to utilize alongside this SOE. Because it seems as though, oh my gosh, multiple victim murders and shootings took place. We need to put the Band-Aid back on.
I have been saying since the beginning of all the SOEs, right, and I'm consistent with it, the SOEs, you need to institute curfews.
Yes, I knew you were going to say that.
If you do not put in curfews either geographically or in a particular communities, you would not have the effect that this SOE, and that's why I'm saying I'm hopeful if we learn from the last three.
But also, shouldn't this be a time with improved police powers where you have an easier time building a case to actually charge these people who are supposed to be gang members and murderers and the like?
Well, so I am hopeful. I am still saying, if you allow the criminal elements to move freely, then we are not actually, listen, the law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with understand and accept that they will have to have a limited amount of movements. If they feel safe that within my movements, if in my community, I am safe to move within my own community because I have a curfew in my community, hey, they might feel safe. But if it is that you're not putting in the curfew that is needed in my area, short term, you don't have to have a full, but I'm simply saying you don't need the you don't need the law to put in the curfew.
Here's the thing, folks, I think you need to understand where Ashraf is coming from. He is coming from, all things being equal, good intentions. Not a lot of, there are people who don't trust the intentions anymore.
Yes.
The Prime Minister went on to CARICOM and said, well, because of our policies, the only policy that we know of was the state of emergency. And because the Americans, the murder rate went down. Don't mind the fact that the murder rate went down before the election, technically, right? Cool. What do we see the government doing now? Oh my gosh, they had a triple homicide just now. After several double homicides, institute the state of emergency, ask the Americans to come back. You have hope. But if this was the first state of emergency or the second state of emergency, fine. And technically, those were the second and the third, by the way, right?
Yes.
Now we're on the fourth. Well, my hope level ain't there. And again, that's fine. But it also is because of what they communicated. Because they did not communicate that we have new strategies to put in place. And to be fair, the most effective state of emergency, ironically, might be the one on the PNM because Junior Benjamin had certain public statements about, while the state of emergency, putting strategies in place to deal with crime. And we did see the reduction from January of 2025.
Right.
Right? I don't know if those things were carried over or what helped sustain us throughout the year. But if the government has more that they should say it. Not just hope that we give them the benefit of the doubt. Because we live in a world where people are now, whether it is fair or not, whether it is real or not, are looking at how the government is operating and they're saying, why are you wanting to censor so many people? And the truth is, they might actually have no desire to censor the media or anything like that, but the public perception is it exists. Right? So thanks to the callers, thanks Ashraf for joining me. Now, I'll say this, the lower third did say, letter of the law versus state of the law versus the spirit of the law. It's because, again, I do wonder if at some point we should question, not necessarily disagree or condemn, but question the fact that they kind of circumvented the 3/5 majority further extension by just cutting the state of emergency, right? But I'm not saying that we should remove that, we should have like a 6-month limit before another state of emergency, because you could have a legitimate emergency. And technically speaking, I think Ashraf, Mr. San Fernando, we will kind of agree. We could complain about them using the state of emergency, but to say that it is completely unnecessary, right? I don't think we would say that. My issue is what you're going to do with it. Because if it's just another Band-Aid, then when this is over, we'll have another, right? We'll see the murder rate start to spike again. Folks, don't miss 10 questions with Annie Johnson coming up next at 10 a.m. Ashraf, again, once again, thank you. Stay safe. Remember your leaders to the Republic and to each other. Be nice. It's nice to be nice. We'll see you next week, so have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
WESN.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact